the leaks, the explosions, and the spoilers. Okay, I don't know where the explosions came from. I'm maybe hyping this up more than it needs to be, but you've probably heard about a few little things that have been leaked, little things, overnight, and I wanted to talk about some of that stuff, particularly some of the stuff you may have missed. But just as a quick note, I am trying to avoid giving any spoilers in the titles and the thumbnails for these videos. I'm trying to make it so people, when they click on the video, they know, what they're going to get, but you don't get the actual details in the title or in the thumbnail, because I know that really can irritate people, and I'm doing my best to avoid any of that stuff. I want it to be very much a kind of opt-in situation. If it's in the subfeed, you can kind of tell that you're going to learn something that could be spoilery, and you can make a decision, you click or you don't click. So in this video, I wanted to talk about public sectors. On top of this, the Taken King subclasses and the exotics for those subclasses in particular, a new Hive boss coming in Destiny 2, which is really interesting, and the 9 vendor, specifically I'm referring to Xur, but this also tells us some other interesting things about vendors and social spaces, so I'm going to break it down in this video. So firstly, we've learned a little bit about public sectors. These are kind of the areas where you matchmake with other people when you're in patrol spaces and things like that. And these areas are also where you will find the kind of base for each NPC on each location or planet in Destiny 2. But there is going to be one vendor which actually shows up randomly inside of the public areas on explorable worlds, and that is Xur, the agent of the 9. So of course this stuff was leaked from the strategy guide for Destiny 2, and right here we have a description. So Xur is a strange vendor who randomly appears in public sectors in each of the 4 worlds. Depending on planetary alignments and Bungie's whim, Xur sells exotic equipment and only takes legendary shards in exchange for them. So Xur is confirmed to return, and he's going to appear inside of random public sectors on each of the 4 worlds. So the hunt for Xur is actually going to be a real hunt now. He's not just going to appear in one of a couple of social spaces. He could be anywhere in these kind of vast spaces, so that's really interesting. But on top of this, legendary shards is a currency that will be used to purchase stuff from Xur. Of course, these are the kind of icons that we've seen on the character screen coming in Destiny 2. I actually spoke about these a few days back, and a lot of people were like, well, they're just legendary marks. Why are you making them out to be anything other than legendary marks? And to me, they very much appear to be some kind of currency that was wider than what legendary marks were, as well as having the same capability. And here we are. They are the currency that you use to buy stuff from Xur, and they're also used as a currency for other vendors as well as for improving gear. Up next, I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the exotics. So you may have seen some of these, and I wanted to pick out some that have abilities linked to some of the new subclasses. So we don't have anything specifically for the Night Stalker, but we do have the Dragon's Shadow chest piece for the Hunter, and this is an exotic with the intrinsic perk of Quicksilver Mail, which grants increased movement and weapon handling speed for a short time after dodging. This is particularly interesting because you do have your recharge of melee abilities as well as weapon reload, I believe, with the 2 different options for the dodge. So on top of this, you'll be able to stack increased movement and weapon handling. It's going to be pretty awesome, actually. Of course, with the Night Stalker itself being in the game, in terms of the Hunter having more PvE utility, obviously it's going to be very, very strong after all. But it's really cool to see the kind of class ability get even more love here as well. And I actually think the Hunter's class ability, now that we know Night Stalker is a thing, is pretty awesome. We also see the Lucky Raspberry right there, so that will be returning from Destiny 1 and still increases the chaining capability of Arc Bolt grenades and has a chance of a recharge each time it deals damage as well. So that's a little bit of a modification to that exotic. And we do have the Raiden Flux, which has the intrinsic perk of Synapse Junctions. Quick successive attacks with Arc Staff increase its damage output and duration. So that's really cool, kind of a crowd control type bonus for Arc Staff itself. Could be very good for kind of single, tanky targets, or even crowd control in general. Up next though, we have the Warlock Exotics. So the Crown of Tempests with the intrinsic perk of Conduction Tines allows arc ability kills to increase the recharge rate of your arc abilities. Of course, this is for the Stormcaller. So this definitely sounds promising and almost gives a tiny kind of flavor of the kind of Voidwalker's ability to recharge things, but for the Arc subclass, obviously it's just through an exotic. It's probably not going to be anywhere near as powerful as what the Voidwalker can do with its void damage. So it's cool to get a look at some of these these exotics. For the Titan up next, we have the Doom Fang Pauldron, and these are the Horns of Doom. As we've actually seen in some of the trailers, that is actually the name of the intrinsic perk, so Shield Bash melee kills recharge Shield Throw, and the melee ability kills recharge Sentinel Super Shield. We also have, though, the Hallow Fire Heart, and this is a Sunbreaker exotic, coming with the intrinsic perk of Sunfire Furnace, greatly improves the recharge rate of your solar abilities while Hammer of Sol is charged. So essentially, if you're sitting on your super, you're going to get more melee charges, more grenade charges, so that's pretty interesting. It's really cool to see some of the kind of abilities bumped up and us have different options for that. And potentially, depending on what these cooldowns are like, you know, there might be certain situations where sitting with this super and kind of keeping hold of it and then using those bonus cooldowns will actually be really useful. The Crest of Alpha Lupi is going to return. It generates an additional orb from supers and a healing pulse when Barricade is activated. So that sounds like it could potentially be a pretty powerful loadout right there. You know, pop the Barricade and you're getting a continuous kind of healing effect. That could be pretty cool. We have Lion Rampant, which simply provides additional aerial maneuverability, which is pretty interesting. It doesn't really explain how that works, but perhaps this could be your kind of Twilight Garrison equivalent for Destiny 2 that does something somewhat similar. So I think it's really interesting the way that they've approached some of these exotics. It's kind of like they're combining some of the kind of different abilities, particularly recharges, and, you know, having things like healing with those particular Titan exotics as well, are kind of blurring the lines between what we expect to see on particular classes, or they're kind of at least taking a page out of the book of another class and, you know, kind of granting something similar. You know, the ability to recharge health, for example, on a Titan is something you can do on a Warlock, and you can get a kind of miniature version of that potentially by using the Barricade. So I think it's really cool that they've kind of taken this approach. Finally, as part of this leak, there is a kind of full list of all of the exotics, as well as this, though, all of the kind of missions and activities, the areas inside of explorable planets, as well as even the strikes that are coming in Destiny 2. And I don't want to spoil anything to do with the story here, but there is a new strike, which is particularly interesting. So, Savathun's Song. Now, the less spoilery part of this is that it tells us this will be a Hive-based strike, but the more spoilery part is that Savathun is actually Oryx's sister. There's a whole bunch of lore, obviously, between the kind of three sisters, the Hive, and the planet that they came from, the worm gods and all of that kind of stuff. But the fact that Oryx's sister is kind of in the system is very, very alarming, obviously, and it does kind of raise a number of questions about what's going on. It seems likely that the Savathun's Song strike will take place on Titan. Titan is a place of particular interest to the Hive, and of course, Titan is a moon of Saturn. Saturn is where Oryx's Dreadnought was located. There is speculation about whether Oryx could have potentially landed on the planet Titan, and that might be why the Hive have such an interest here. You know, there could be all number of things going on here, but it turns out that Oryx's sister is very much here, present in the system, so it's going to be interesting to see precisely what this means. So that is one of the most interesting things to point out. Hopefully it doesn't really spoil too much. Obviously, we don't know any of the backstory about what's actually going on here, which is of course awesome, and we'll get to experience that in the game. So there we go, guys. That is the bulk of the stuff I wanted to break down in this video relating to all of these leaks and everything like that. Some pretty exciting stuff. The hype for Destiny 2 is building to a massive climax at this point. It's going to be really, really awesome finally getting into the game next week. For now, though, I hope you have enjoyed this video. If you have, a like and comment below is very much appreciated. If you're new to the channel, be sure to hit that subscribe button if you want to see a lot more Destiny 2 content. If you want to save 10% on Control Freak products, including the new Destiny 2 edition thumbsticks, then follow the link in the description and use code HOUNDISH and you can save yourself a few bucks. But for now, I appreciate you watching as always, and I will catch you very soon.